Here at Money 2020, the party, we're talking to Simon Taylor, and he's basically going to do a track tomorrow on blockchain.
All about blockchain.
Now, okay, blockchain. I mean, you're a banker. Why the hell do you mess around with blockchain?
Turns out banking's a very expensive business. You've seen banks announce they're spending £6 to £8 billion and euros on digital transformation. Do you know most of the middle and back office, most of the people for banks? Yeah. They're moving this piece of paper from here to here. They haven't figured out digital yet, and the problem is they have.
Well, come on. They all have a database with layers of people around it to protect the database.
Yeah, they've got that for the middle bit of what they do, but not all the processes around it. So yeah, they can have your bank account information, and then when you go to get a bank account, how do they do it? They check your identity card, and then they want to see a statement from an address. Maybe you're doing like a loan. Do you have to go into a branch and sign something? Yeah, you do. And you know what happens with that?
What are you saying? What are you saying? If you have a nice, fast-moving central database, you cannot run an efficient bank. I mean, you're building digital banks all around. Let me finish the question. You're building digital banks as FS11 all around the world, based on a central database, not on blockchain.
100% correct. However, different parts of banks have to have silos in between them. There are good reasons why you put these walls in between different bits of banks. Yes, a lot of it's aging legacy infrastructure that could be so much better if they just came to 11FS. However, you would still have the problem that you are intentionally putting these walls, but not only between the inside of banks, but there are 19,000 SWIFT member banks. Each one of those has a different type of core system, and they're all using standards to talk to each other. The problem with those standards
from the past and not very efficient.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but they're all implemented differently. So we've got a standard that we all use differently, which isn't a standard at all. Now, the fundamental problem in banking is I need to know that what I see is the same as what you see. Now, I can send you a message and say, what I see is the same as yours, and I can even send you a checksum, which is basically to run some maths on what I see, and you run some maths on what you see.
Okay, so you're basically saying we haven't figured out a single source of truth yet, and blockchain is important for that?
Because you don't want one single source of truth. You don't want just one, you want many. And so if you have, fundamentally you have to. If I had one source of truth, then I have the biggest bank in the world. Now, where do I centralize all of world banking? Where do I centralize it in China? Do I centralize it in the USA? Where do I centralize it?
I want to centralize it everywhere all around the world, and that's blockchain is of course fantastic because you can put it anywhere.
Well, that's not centralized.
Okay, so let me tell you guys, I'm really enthusiastic about Simon because he knows something about the traditional financial industry and he knows something about blockchain. Let's ask him a little bit more challenging question than this boring one. Simon, in 10 years, blockchain will have gone through, generation 1, 2, 3, 4, endless amount of transaction per second. Energy won't be a problem. The governance is now being used to. Where will we be in 10 years, and what role will blockchain play? I'll give him about 10 seconds to think about that because he will start talking immediately and then start thinking later.
So I think we'll be in a position where data is owned by the individual a lot more. So we'll get to a point where self-sovereign data becomes a reality in the.
Like I have to now agree 100 times a minute in my mailbox. Yes, I agree that Facebook has to give me decent ads.
You looked at the basic attention token. Have you looked at how the new browsers?
I looked at the Brave browser.
See, no,
yes, and I looked at that Brave browser. I really tried it. I'm totally agreeing with it, but
give that 10 years.
And then I gave it up for Chrome.
Yeah, but give that 10 years. Right, now imagine the experience in which the world's largest social network has got real reputational issues because of how they manage data. Yeah. Now imagine the world's largest social network is in a position in which they are actively putting one of their top executives looking at blockchain. Yes. Now start to think about
Imagine that Facebook starts the face coin tomorrow and starts doing a payment system to support their customers.
No, it's
like WeChat.
It's not payments, it's advertising. Advertising is what supports the internet. Advertising is the new oil. It has been for 10 years. Advertising is where revenue around data comes from, and advertising is going to be where it is. Now, I have a better understanding of the data about me than Facebook does. I am the only being on the planet that knows me better than Facebook, because I have access to my Google information, I have access to an old Yahoo account, to Microsoft information. I'm the only person who can access all of that. So, if I could
You really believe I'm going to be the sovereign owner of my data, who's being an emperor, decides what's going to happen, or am I just going to be a robot which says yes to every question which is given to me?
A bit of both. Somewhere in the middle. Like, you're going to say yes to a lot, and it's going to be really easy to say yes to a lot, but effectively you'll be more empowered than you are now, but also that your data will be more valuable because they'll have a richer data set about you. And I think that business case...
So data is going to be decentralized. I'm going to be more in charge. I will be able to make more decisions.
More in charge. I think you'll probably outsource who you put in charge of that data. However, your data will be more valuable. And that's the big thing, is that if I can see more about you, the only way I get to see more about you is by giving you back some of your privacy. That's the that's the thing that seems kind of strange on the face of it.
But I mean, but Simon, advertising is nothing. You know, it's a minimum amount of money. It's just a couple of hundred. It's 100, 200 billion. It's about 200 billion a year. That's nothing compared to the financial industry. So if you say that blockchain and me being in charge of data will change everything, but you're talking about the trillions, the thousands of trillions of dollars who are in assets. How will blockchain change that?
That's an interesting
tokenizing all the assets, changing the being a payment industry which is really efficient.
So I don't know if it's the payments industry. I do think there is something to tokenization of traditional asset classes. So yes, crypto assets are interesting. I don't think you're going to tokenize securities. I don't think you're going to tokenize any of the listed market instruments. But you've got this sweet spot in the middle where you're talking about, what about private equity? What about real estate? Tokenizing that stuff. That could be interesting.
That's a $600 trillion industry.
Yeah, but over 30-year lifespans, right? So the size of that $600 trillion is like 600 times the world trade every year. So like, if you think about these numbers, the size of the industry is the size of the aggregate contracts over years. So like, if world trade every year is like 10 trillion, then how can an industry be 600 trillion?
All right, so in 10 years, blockchain, how will it have changed the world except for advertising and except for tokenization of real estate?
I think we'll just think about how we interact with value differently. I think more things will have value and we'll value things that we didn't before. We'll assign economic value to things that we valued but didn't have economic value. I think that's the biggest thing.
Okay. Tomorrow, we'll have a nice distributed ledger session with Simon Taylor. I'm going to do a small session in there. We're going to answer all the technical questions. Be there tomorrow, 10:05, or no, you're starting at 9:30. 9:30. Everybody will be completely enthusiastic at Money 2020.